And thank you very much, Randy. Do remember you can also contact us via the mail at Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271. I will get to your calls in the second part of the broadcast today, so please be patient and hang on, or dial in at 888-ASK-HANK. I just feel compelled to comment on an article I read this morning in USA Today, because that article was titled, Meet the Pint-Sized Ancient Ancestor of Dinosaurs. And the narrative, as per usual, is evolutionary to the core. It presupposes the Darwinian tree of life, which is purposely designed to persuade the faithful that all species are, as Darwin supposed, lineal descendants of some few beings, which he said lived long ago before the first bed of the Cambrian system was deposited. And of course, the narrative is that at the root of the tree is a handful of organic building blocks. At the tips are all modern ancestors, and of course the mere mention of it invokes devotees to bow deeply at the twin altars of common descent and natural selection. And the narrative infers that all organic beings have descended from some one primordial form. What few, very, very few, if any, do when they read narratives such as the one underlying the US Today article is to stop and ponder what is being fed to them under the banner of science. How probable is it that flying birds evolved from their alleged ancestral dinosaurs? Is it really possible for reptilian scales to evolve into feathers that are common in birds that are observable today? And what about the lack of transitional forms? Why is it that strangely missing from popular conversations today is the reality that evidence from the fossil record points overwhelmingly away from the classical Darwinianism that most Americans were force-fed in high school? You know, I'm increasingly convinced that our modern newspaper should bear the warning, think before you swallow. If anyone thinks even momentarily about scales evolving into feathers, for example, they will no doubt dismiss the idea as unfounded faith rather than fruitful science. And I say that because the science of statistical probability alone demonstrates that chance operating in concert with undirected processes cannot magically turn a reptilian scale into a feather. In other words, the meticulous engineering of feathers hardly squares with evolutionary probabilities, no matter how much time you happen to bake into the equation. There may be as many as 1 million barbules that cooperate to bind the barbs of a feather that is meticulously engineered to be impervious to air penetration. And not only that, but positioning of feathers is controlled by a complex network of tendons that allows the feather to open like the slats of a blind when a wing is raised. And so even a cursory amount of consideration ought to be enough to know that the evolutionary narrative is little more than a cruel hoax. And in an age of scientific enlightenment, it's incredible to think that thinking people would be willing to maintain that something so vastly complex arose by chance. And while Darwin predicted hundreds of thousands of transitional forms leading to the fossil of the Cambrian explosion, none actually appear. And, I should add, since Darwin, the problem has only gotten worse. The fossil record has greatly expanded, and yet all known animal body plans appear in the form that they possess today. And when we hear social scientists like Anthony Fauci talk about scientific verities concerning COVID-19, I think we'd all do well to listen with a healthy bit of skepticism as well. I'm not suggesting that bureaucrats, and I'm using that term advisedly, I'm talking about government officials concerned with procedural correctness at the expense of the people that they serve, but that these bureaucrats be summarily dismissed, but rather that their words be received with a healthy bit of skepticism. Fauci, for example, is a humanist who has little or no sympathy for the significance of the church. For Fauci, the church is at best ancillary to a properly ordered society. Whereas, for you and I as authentic Christians, no society can properly function without the church. So beware of government guidelines. Don't just swallow them. Consider them carefully, because your and my freedom are being incrementally encroached upon. Sort of like that, that proverbial frog being incrementally boiled to death. Consider what just happened in Canada. In addition to limiting participation in church functions, Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health has called for suspending spiritual activities, including but not limited to the use of prayer shawls, indoor singing, and communion. It's one thing to mandate social distancing. It's quite another to prohibit a Eucharistic sacrament that strikes at the very heart of the Christian experience. Moreover, the constant appeal to science may well just be a Trojan horse. As I've already indicated, what masquerades as science is often little better than prejudice. Is it really science to suppose that scales evolved into feathers? Or is this just a dogmatic appeal to the mantra that supposes that the physical facts fix all the facts? Just before I came into the studio, I read an insightful article by Father Mark Seitzma, an article in which he references the quip of a Chinese scholar who said, in China we can criticize Darwin but not the government. In America, you can criticize the government but not Darwin. Just watch what happens, added Father Mark, when a person today raises a reasonable objection to evolution or climate change. The intellectual goon squads vilify first, they answer questions later. Doubt me, asked Father Mark? Well, go to a science forum and try it. All the evils that scientific minds blame on religion, ignorance, deceitfulness, greed, exploitation, all these things modern science is guilty of itself. Well, I digress, getting back to the article in USA Today on the pint-size ancient ancestor of dinosaurs. How many of you have heard about Archaeopteryx as the missing link between dinosaurs and birds? Well, while this is a dogmatically touted truism, it is far from true. Archaeopteryx can hardly be the missing link for the simple reason that birds and their alleged ancestral dinosaurs thrived during the same period of time. Moreover, Archaeopteryx appears abruptly in the fossil record with masterfully engineered wings and feathers common in birds that are observable today. Nonetheless, evolutionists continue to forward this evolutionary fairy tale with a fundamentalist fervor that would make devotees of the Westboro Baptist Church beam in rapt adoration. Well, again, these articles that appear, the narrative that we hear in our culture, have to be met with an appropriate amount of skepticism. Let my people think. And test all things, hold fast to that which is good. The issue of origins, and the reason I bring this up with a lot of passion, is not just a issue, it's the issue. How one views their origins will ultimately determine how they live their life.